Hashtag black woman marries disabled man and gets us the biggest surprise of her life while taking pictures. Hashtag part 1. The chance encounter. The busy halls of Atlanta Medical Center echoed with the usual morning sounds as Jasmine Williams hurried to start her day. At 32 years old, she had already made a name for herself as one of the best physical therapists in the hospital. Her dark skin glowed with natural beauty, and her braided hair was always neatly tied back in a professional style as she worked with her patients. That morning seemed like any other. Jasmine checked her schedule and saw a new patient's name: Marcus Bennett, a military veteran. The notes mentioned that he had lost the use of his legs during a mission overseas 6 months ago. She had worked with many veterans before, but something about this appointment felt different. When the door opened at 9 a.m. sharp, Jasmine looked up from her paperwork. A handsome man in his mid-30s wheeled himself into the room. Despite being in a wheelchair, he sat up straight with pride and confidence. His warm brown eyes met hers, and he gave her a smile that lit up his whole face. "Good morning, Ms. Williams," Marcus said, his voice deep and friendly. "I hope you're ready for a challenge because I'm determined to make the most of these sessions." Jasmine couldn't help but smile back. Most new patients came in feeling defeated or angry, but Marcus was different. "Please call me Jasmine," she replied, walking over to shake his hand. "And I like a good challenge, Mr. Bennett." "Then you should call me Marcus," he said, his handshake firm and confident. As Jasmine began her initial assessment, she learned more about Marcus. He had been a captain in the army, leading missions until an explosion changed his life forever. But instead of letting it break him, he spoke about his injury with acceptance and even managed to joke about it. "You know what's funny?" he said while Jasmine checked his range of motion. "I always wanted to be taller. Now I get to adjust my height whenever I want with different wheelchair settings." His positive attitude was infectious. Jasmine found herself laughing more during that first session than she had in weeks. Even when exercises were difficult, Marcus pushed through with determination, never complaining. During their session, other staff members noticed something special too. Sarah, a nurse who often worked with Jasmine, passed by the therapy room several times, later telling Jasmine she had never seen a patient with such a great attitude. Before they knew it, the hour-long session was over. As Marcus prepared to leave, he turned to Jasmine with hope in his eyes. "Same time next week?" "3 times a week," Jasmine corrected him with a professional smile. "Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We have a lot of work to do if we want to strengthen your upper body and help you become more independent." "3 times a week? Must be my lucky day," Marcus said with a wink that caught Jasmine off guard. She felt her cheeks grow warm, but maintained her professional composure. That evening, as Jasmine drove home to her small apartment in downtown Atlanta, she couldn't stop thinking about Marcus. It wasn't just his handsome face or charming personality, it was his spirit. In all her years as a physical therapist, she had never met someone who faced such a life-changing injury with so much grace and humor. At home, while heating up her dinner in the microwave, Jasmine called her best friend Lisa to tell her about her day. "There's just something about him," she said, stirring her coffee. "He doesn't let his disability define him. You should see how his eyes light up when he talks about his future plans." "Girl, you better be careful," Lisa warned playfully. "It sounds like someone might be crushing on their patient." "Don't be ridiculous," Jasmine laughed, but she felt her heart skip a beat. "He's just a patient, and I'm just his physical therapist. Nothing more." But as she got ready for bed that night, Jasmine couldn't help but feel excited about Wednesday's session. Little did she know, this was just the beginning of a story that would change both their lives forever. 2 months had passed since Marcus first wheeled into Jasmine's therapy room. The Atlanta summer was in full swing, making the hospital halls sticky with humidity despite the air conditioning. But neither Jasmine nor Marcus seemed to mind the heat during their sessions. "Come on, Marcus, 5 more reps," Jasmine encouraged as she watched him lift weights to strengthen his upper body. Sweat dripped down his face, but his determination never wavered. "Yes, ma'am," he grunted with a smile, pushing through the exercise. Other patients in the therapy room often stopped to watch him work, inspired by his dedication. After the session, as Jasmine helped Marcus wipe down his equipment, he cleared his throat nervously. "Hey, Jasmine. I was wondering if maybe you'd like to grab coffee sometime, outside of the hospital. Jasmine froze. She had been fighting her growing feelings for Marcus, telling herself it wasn't professional, but her heart raced at his invitation. I don't know, Marcus. You're my patient, she started. I checked the hospital rules, he said quickly. There's nothing against it as long as we're both adults and it doesn't interfere with treatment. Plus, I'm being transferred to Dr. Johnson next week anyway. That evening, Jasmine called her mother for advice. Mama, remember that patient I told you about? Marcus, he asked me out for coffee. The disabled veteran? Her mother's voice crackled through the phone. Baby, are you sure about this? Life with someone in a wheelchair won't be easy. Mama. Jasmine felt defensive. Marcus is more capable and caring than most able-bodied men I know. His wheelchair doesn't define him. Her mother sighed. I just want what's best for you, baby. People will talk. They always do when they see a mixed couple, and with his disability. I don't care what people think, Jasmine replied firmly. You raised me better than that. The next day, Jasmine found Marcus before his session. Yes, she said simply. Yes. His face lit up with hope. Yes to coffee, she smiled. Saturday at 2 o'clock, there's a nice cafe down the street. That Saturday, Jasmine spent extra time getting ready. She chose a yellow sundress that complemented her dark skin and let her braids fall loose around her shoulders. When she arrived at the cafe, Marcus was already there, looking handsome in a blue button-down shirt. The coffee date turned into 3 hours of conversation. Marcus told her about growing up in Boston, his time in the military, and his dreams of becoming a motivational speaker. Jasmine shared stories about her large family in Atlanta, her passion for helping others, and her secret love of painting. You know, Marcus said, stirring his second cup of coffee, when I first got injured, I thought my life was over. But now I realize it was just beginning. Meeting you, it's made me see things differently. Jasmine felt tears in her eyes. You've changed how I see things too, Marcus. You're the strongest person I know. As they left the cafe, they noticed some people staring at them, a black woman and a white man in a wheelchair. But their judgmental looks couldn't touch the bubble of happiness surrounding them. The next few weeks were filled with more dates, movies, parks, and even a concert where Marcus surprised everyone by leading the dance party in his wheelchair. Jasmine's mother, after meeting Marcus for dinner, had to admit she'd been wrong about him. That man looks at you like you hummed the moon, her mother said afterward. And the way he makes you laugh. I haven't seen you this happy in years. One evening, as they watched the sunset from Piedmont Park, Marcus took Jasmine's hand. You know what's funny? Before my injury, I was always running around, too busy to appreciate moments like this. Now I've learned to slow down and see the beauty in everything, especially you. Jasmine squeezed his hand, knowing that despite all the challenges they might face, this was just the beginning of their journey together. In Marcus's eyes, she saw not a disabled man, but a future filled with love, laughter, and endless possibilities. Little did she know, Marcus had already started planning something that would change both their lives forever. Spring arrived in Atlanta, bringing warm breezes and blooming dogwood trees. 6 months had passed since Jasmine and Marcus's first coffee date, and their love had grown stronger with each passing day. The hospital corridors where they first met now held special memories as they passed through them, Marcus visiting Jasmine during her lunch breaks. One sunny Saturday morning, Marcus invited Jasmine to meet his family. He had been nervous about it all week, wheeling back and forth in his apartment as he planned everything perfectly. My mom can be a bit protective, Marcus warned as they drove to his parents' house in the suburbs. Ever since the accident, she treats me like I'm made of glass. Jasmine reached over and squeezed his hand. Don't worry, I deal with overprotective mothers every day at work. The Bennett family home was a beautiful 2-story house with a newly built wheelchair ramp at the front. As they approached the door, it flew open to reveal Marcus's mother, Linda Bennett, a petite woman with graying blonde hair and kind eyes. You must be Jasmine. Linda pulled her into a warm hug before they could even say hello. Marcus hasn't stopped talking about you for months. Inside, the house was filled with delicious smells. Marcus's father, Robert, was at the grill in the backyard, and his younger sister Emma was setting the table. The family had modified their home to make every space accessible for Marcus, showing their dedication to his independence. During lunch, Jasmine watched with joy as Marcus joked with his sister and debated sports with his father. This was a different side of him, relaxed, playful, completely at home. Linda kept piling food onto Jasmine's plate, treating her like family already. "So, Jasmine," Linda said over dessert, "Marcus tells us you're the best physical therapist at Atlanta Medical." Jasmine blushed. "I just try my best to help people." "She's being modest," Marcus interrupted proudly. "She's amazing at her job. You should see how her patients light up when she walks into the room." After lunch, Emma pulled out old photo albums, much to Marcus's embarrassment. They spent hours looking at pictures of young Marcus in his football uniform, at his military graduation, and with his unit overseas. Jasmine noticed how Linda's hands trembled slightly when they reached photos from before the accident, but Marcus kept the mood light with funny stories about each picture. As the day went on, Robert pulled Jasmine aside while Marcus was showing Emma something on his phone. "You know," he said quietly, "after Marcus got hurt, we worried he'd never find happiness again, but seeing him with you, you brought our boy back to life." Tears filled Jasmine's eyes as she hugged her future father-in-law. "He's brought so much joy to my life too." Later that evening, as they sat on Marcus's balcony watching the sunset, he turned to Jasmine with serious eyes. "So, what did you think of them?" "I think they're wonderful," she smiled. "Your mom tried to send me home with enough leftovers to feed an army." Marcus laughed, then grew quiet. "You know, when I first got injured, I thought no one would ever want to be with me, that I'd be a burden." He took her hand. "But you never saw me as broken or disabled. You just saw me." "Because that's who you are," Jasmine said softly. "You're just Marcus, the man I love, the man who makes me laugh, who challenges me to be better, who sees the good in everything." "I love you too," he whispered, pulling her down for a kiss. On their drive home, Jasmine couldn't stop smiling. She thought about her own family's initial doubts, now replaced with genuine affection for Marcus. She thought about the stares they sometimes got in public, not just because of his wheelchair or their different races, but because of the obvious love that radiated between them. What Jasmine didn't know was that Marcus had one more family meeting planned, this time with her parents. He had been practicing wheeling with one hand so he could hold something very special in the other, waiting for the perfect moment to change their lives forever. Marcus had been planning this day for 3 months. Every detail needed to be perfect. He had already asked Jasmine's parents for their blessing, meeting them at their home while Jasmine was working a late shift at the hospital. "I know I may not be what you imagined for your daughter," he had told them honestly, "but I promise to love and cherish her for the rest of my life." Jasmine's father, a tall man with kind eyes, had looked at him for a long moment before breaking into a smile. "Son, you're exactly what we imagined, a man who loves our daughter with his whole heart." Now, on a bright Thursday morning, Marcus wheeled into Atlanta Medical Center with a special mission. He had gathered help from everyone: Jasmine's coworkers, his physical therapy team, and even some of his old military buddies who had flown in secretly for this day. Sarah, the nurse who had watched their love story unfold from the beginning, helped coordinate everything. "Jasmine has no idea," she whispered excitedly as she helped decorate the physical therapy room where they first met. At 10:00 a.m., Jasmine walked into work as usual. The front desk staff tried to act normal as she passed by, but their excited smiles nearly gave everything away. When she reached her office, she found a note on her desk. "Please come to room 205 for an emergency consultation." Worried, Jasmine hurried to room 205, the room where she had first met Marcus. When she opened the door, she gasped. The room was transformed with soft lights and flowers. Photos of their relationship hung on strings across the ceiling: their first coffee date, family gatherings, park visits, and countless happy moments. Marcus was in the center of the room, but he wasn't alone. Behind him stood 4 of his military friends in full uniform. Dr. Johnson, who had taken over Marcus's therapy, stood to one side with something hidden behind his back. "Marcus?" Jasmine's voice trembled. "What's happening?" Marcus wheeled forward, taking her hand. "Jasmine Williams, you changed my life the moment I rolled into this room. You saw past my wheelchair and into my heart. You've shown me that love has no limitations." Tears began rolling down Jasmine's cheeks as she realized what was happening. Hospital staff gathered at the windows, watching with excitement. Then came the moment that left everyone speechless. Dr. Johnson stepped forward, revealing what he had been hiding, an experimental mobility device that Marcus had been secretly practicing with for weeks. With his military friend's help, Marcus was secured into the device. Slowly, carefully, Marcus rose to his feet. Jasmine's hands flew to her mouth as Marcus stood eye to eye with her for the first time. He was shaking slightly with effort, but his eyes were filled with determination and love. "I wanted to do this standing up," he said softly, reaching into his pocket, "to show you that with you by my side, I can do anything." One of his friends handed him a small velvet box. Marcus opened it, revealing a beautiful diamond ring that caught the morning light. "Jasmine Williams, will you marry me?" The room was completely silent, everyone holding their breath. Tears streamed down Jasmine's face as she nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, yes, of course yes." The room erupted in cheers as Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger. His friends helped him back into his wheelchair, and Jasmine immediately sat on his lap, kissing him as their audience clapped and whistled. Sarah appeared with champagne, and soon the whole physical therapy department was celebrating. Videos of the proposal, taken by various staff members, were already going viral on social media. "I can't believe you planned all this," Jasmine said, admiring her ring. "And you stood up?" "I've been practicing for weeks," Marcus admitted. "I wanted to show you that our love can overcome any obstacle." As they celebrated with their hospital family, both Jasmine and Marcus knew this was just the beginning of their adventure together. But one more surprise still awaited them, one that would make their wedding day unforgettable. Planning a wedding was more challenging than Jasmine and Marcus had expected. They wanted everything to be perfect, and most importantly, accessible for Marcus and any other guests with disabilities. 3 months before their big day, their living room had turned into a wedding planning headquarters, with magazines, sample cards, and fabric swatches covering every surface. Who knew picking flowers could be so complicated? Marcus laughed as Jasmine showed him the 10th different arrangement of roses and lilies. They sat together in their new apartment, which they had chosen specifically because it was fully accessible and had a beautiful view of the Atlanta skyline. But Marcus had a secret. Every Tuesday and Thursday, while Jasmine worked late shifts at the hospital, he went to a special therapy center. Dr. Johnson had connected him with a new program testing advanced mobility equipment. Marcus was determined to give Jasmine another surprise on their wedding day. "Just don't push yourself too hard," Dr. Johnson warned during one of their secret sessions. "Wedding day nerves are tough enough without adding this challenge." Meanwhile, Jasmine was busy blending their different family traditions. Her mother insisted on gospel music and soul food at the reception, while Marcus's family wanted to include some Irish wedding customs from their heritage. Instead of seeing it as a problem, the couple embraced the chance to create something unique. "Our love story isn't typical," Jasmine told her bridesmaids during a dress fitting. "Why should our wedding be?" The venue they chose was a beautiful garden with paved pathways and ramps discreetly built into the landscaping. The owner had worked with them to ensure every area was accessible, from the ceremony space to the dance floor. One evening, while reviewing their guest list, Jasmine noticed Marcus looking troubled. "What's wrong, honey?" she asked, settling onto his lap as she often did. He hesitated. "I want to dance with you at our wedding. A real dance, not just swaying in my wheelchair." Jasmine took his face in her hands. "Any dance with you is a real dance. Whether you're in your chair or not, it's about us being together." What she didn't know was that Marcus had already arranged something special for their first dance. His physical therapist and best man had been helping him practice for hours, using a combination of the mobility device and specially designed support bars. The wedding was also bringing their families closer together. Jasmine's mother and Marcus's mom had become best friends, spending hours planning the perfect menu and decorations. Even Jasmine's initially skeptical grandmother had become Marcus's biggest fan, especially after he learned to make her famous sweet potato pie recipe. "You got a good one there?" her grandmother told Jasmine one afternoon while they addressed invitations. "He looks at you like you're made of pure gold." With 2 weeks left until the wedding, excitement was building. Their story had spread through social media after the proposal video went viral, and they'd received countless messages from other couples facing similar challenges. "We're doing this for all of them too," Marcus said one night as they looked through some of the messages. showing the world that love doesn't have limits. The night before their wedding rehearsal, Jasmine found Marcus in their spare room, practicing something in his wheelchair. He quickly shut the door when he saw her. "No peeking," he called out. "You'll have to wait for the wedding." Jasmine smiled, wondering what her clever fiancé was planning. She had no idea that in just a few days, she would experience a moment that would leave everyone speechless. As they fell asleep that night, Marcus held Jasmine close. "Are you nervous about tomorrow?" she asked softly. "Not at all," he replied with a confident smile. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." Little did Jasmine know, tomorrow's rehearsal was just the beginning. The real surprise was still to come, carefully planned and practiced, waiting for their perfect moment in front of all their loved ones. The morning of the wedding arrived with perfect weather. Sunlight streamed through the windows of the bridal suite where Jasmine sat surrounded by her bridesmaids. Her wedding dress, specially chosen to look beautiful whether she was standing or sitting on Marcus's lap, flowed around her like a white cloud. "Girl, you are glowing," Lisa, her maid of honor, exclaimed as she helped adjust Jasmine's veil. The hairstylist had worked magic with Jasmine's braids, weaving white flowers through them to create a crown-like effect that matched her bouquet. Meanwhile, in the groom's room, Marcus was getting ready with his groomsmen. His military friends helped him into his custom-made black tuxedo, designed to look perfect while he was seated in his wheelchair. "Everything ready for later?" his best man whispered, referring to their secret plan. Marcus nodded, a mix of nervousness and excitement on his face. "I've practiced 100 times. Today has to be perfect." The garden venue looked magical. White chairs lined the paved pathway that would serve as the aisle, with purple and white flowers decorating every corner. Marcus's wheelchair would easily roll down the smooth surface to wait for his bride. As guests arrived, they noticed how beautifully the families had blended their traditions. Gospel music played softly in the background while Irish blessing cards sat on each seat. The smell of soul food mixed with traditional Irish dishes wafted from the reception area. When it was time for the ceremony to begin, Marcus wheeled himself to the front, looking handsome and confident in his tuxedo. His eyes filled with tears as the music changed and the bridal party began their entrance. Then everyone stood as Jasmine appeared with her father. She was a vision in white, her dark skin glowing with happiness. Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. Their eyes met, and suddenly they were the only two people in the world. As Jasmine's father placed her hand in Marcus's, he whispered, "Take care of my baby girl." "With all my heart," Marcus promised. The ceremony was beautiful in its simplicity. They had written their own vows, making everyone laugh and cry. Marcus spoke about how Jasmine had taught him that love had no boundaries, while Jasmine talked about finding her soulmate in the most unexpected place. "I promise to be not just your wife," Jasmine said, her voice full of emotion, "but your partner in every adventure, your support in every challenge, and your biggest cheerleader in every triumph." "I promise to love you more each day," Marcus responded, holding her hands tightly, "to show you that our love can overcome any obstacle, and to spend my life making you as happy as you've made me." When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Jasmine leaned down to kiss Marcus, and the garden erupted in cheers. Someone released white doves into the sky, their wings catching the sunlight as they soared above the happy couple. The reception began with a surprise performance from Jasmine's church choir, singing a powerful gospel version of Marcus's favorite love song. Marcus's family countered with traditional Irish dancers who had choreographed a special routine that incorporated his wheelchair into their performance. As the celebration continued, guests from both families mixed and mingled, sharing stories and traditions. The food was a hit, with everyone rushing to try both the soul food and Irish dishes. Marcus's mother was seen getting cooking tips from Jasmine's grandmother, while their fathers bonded over shared military stories. But the biggest moment was yet to come. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the reception, the DJ announced it was time for the couple's first dance. Marcus winked at his groomsmen, who moved into position according to their secret plan. Jasmine had no idea that in the next few minutes, she would experience something that would leave her and every guest speechless, a moment that would be shared thousands of times on social media and inspire couples around the world. The wedding photographer gathered everyone for the formal pictures just as the golden hour began. The setting sun cast a perfect, warm glow over the garden venue. Jasmine stood with her bridesmaids, their purple dresses matching the sunset colors, while Marcus waited with his groomsmen. "Let's start with the couple shots," the photographer called out. "I want to catch this beautiful light." Jasmine walked over to Marcus, ready to pose beside his wheelchair as they had discussed. But Marcus gave a subtle signal to his best man, and suddenly his military friends moved into position around him. Dr. Johnson appeared from the crowd, carrying what looked like a special bag. "Marcus?" Jasmine asked, confused. "What's happening?" With practiced movements, Marcus's friends helped him attach something to his legs, the advanced mobility device he'd been secretly training with for months. It was sleeker and more advanced than the one he'd used for the proposal, custom designed for this moment. "Baby, remember when you said you'd support me in every adventure?" Marcus smiled up at his new wife. "Well, this is our next one." The guests gathered around, phones ready to capture whatever was about to happen. Jasmine's mother grabbed her husband's hand tightly, tears already forming in her eyes. Slowly, carefully, Marcus began to rise from his wheelchair. His friends stayed close but didn't touch him. This was all Marcus. The device hummed softly as it helped him stand, supporting his movements just as he practiced countless times. Jasmine's hands flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her face as Marcus stood at his full height. He was shaking slightly with effort, but his eyes were locked on hers, filled with love and determination. "I wanted to stand next to my wife for our wedding photos," he said softly, "to show our children someday that nothing is impossible with love." The photographer, who had been briefed about this surprise, quickly began taking pictures. The setting sun created a perfect golden halo around the couple as Jasmine stepped into Marcus's arms. "You amazing man," she whispered, careful not to disturb his balance. "You did all this for me?" "For us," he corrected, holding her close. "And to show everyone that love doesn't know boundaries." The guests watched in awe as the photographer captured shot after shot. Marcus and Jasmine standing together, their height difference now visible. Marcus kissing his wife's forehead, both of them looking into each other's eyes, lost in their own world. Someone in the crowd started clapping, and soon everyone joined in. There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. Even the photographer had to wipe away tears between shots. "One more surprise," Marcus said with a grin. During his secret practice sessions, he learned to do more than just stand. Very carefully, with his friends spotting him, Marcus took 2 small steps with Jasmine. The crowd gasped. Jasmine's grandmother exclaimed, "Lord have mercy," as she fanned herself with emotion. "Dance with me?" Marcus asked softly. Right there, in the golden sunset light, they swayed together to the music playing in the background. It wasn't the elaborate first dance they'd have later at the reception, but it was perfect. Just a few moments of them holding each other, standing together as husband and wife. The photographer caught every second, knowing these images would be treasured forever. The sunset created magical lighting, the flowers added splashes of color, but nothing was more beautiful than the love shining on both their faces. Finally, Marcus's friends helped him back into his wheelchair, both him and Jasmine breathless with joy and emotion. The photos would later go viral, shared hundreds of thousands of times across social media, inspiring couples around the world. But in that moment, Marcus and Jasmine were only focused on each other, their hearts full of love and the knowledge that together, they could overcome any challenge life put in their path. Their magical moment wasn't over yet, though. The night still held one more surprise, something that would make their reception unforgettable. The wedding reception was in full swing as evening settled over Atlanta. The ballroom sparkled with hundreds of tiny lights, and the dance floor was packed with celebrating guests. But the biggest surprise of the night was still to come. Marcus and Jasmine sat at their sweetheart table, still glowing from their magical photo session. The videos and pictures had already started circulating on social media, with thousands of shares and comments pouring in from around the world. "Are you ready for our first dance?" Marcus asked, his eyes twinkling with mischief. Jasmine looked at him suspiciously. She'd learned that look meant he had something planned. "Another surprise?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Haven't you done enough to make me cry happy tears today?" Marcus just smiled and wheeled toward the dance floor. The DJ announced their first dance, and guests gathered around, expecting to see them dance as they had practiced. Jasmine perched gracefully on Marcus's lap while he guided his wheelchair in smooth movements. Instead, Marcus's military friends appeared again, this time rolling out what looked like a metal framework. The crowd whispered in curiosity as Dr. Johnson stepped forward with another device, different from the one used during photos. This one's special, Marcus explained to Jasmine. It's designed specifically for dancing. With practiced ease, his friends helped him into the support frame, which was decorated with white flowers to match their wedding theme. This device was more flexible than the photo session one, allowing for more natural movement. The opening notes of At Last by Etta James filled the ballroom. It was the song they'd first danced to in Marcus's apartment, when Jasmine had sat on his lap and told him she didn't care what anyone thought about their love. As Marcus stood supported by the frame, Jasmine stepped into his arms. The device allowed him to sway and turn, moving together with his bride in a way he'd practiced for months in secret. "You're full of surprises today," Jasmine whispered as they moved together. "I promised you a first dance you'd never forget," he replied softly. "But I had help." He nodded toward Dr. Johnson and his therapy team, who were watching proudly from the side. Their dance brought everyone to tears. Marcus's mother clutched her husband's hand, remembering how devastated their son had been after his injury. Now here he was, dancing at his wedding, showing the world that love could overcome any obstacle. As the song ended, someone started a trend. Instead of clapping, guests began waving their phone flashlights in the air, creating a sea of twinkling lights around the couple. The moment was magical. Later that night, as the party continued, Jasmine and Marcus finally had a quiet moment alone on the venue's terrace. The Atlanta skyline twinkled behind them as they looked at some of the photos from earlier. "Our story's gone viral," Jasmine said, showing Marcus her phone. Their wedding photos have been shared by major news outlets, inspiring thousands of comments from people around the world. "Maybe we can help other couples see that love has no limitations," Marcus said thoughtfully. "That's worth more than any viral moment." They had already received messages from other couples facing similar challenges, thanking them for showing that love could conquer any obstacle. Several disability advocacy groups had reached out, asking them to share their story. "We should do it," Jasmine decided. "Share our story, help others find their happiness." "Together?" Marcus asked, taking her hand. "Always together," she replied, leaning down to kiss him. Their wedding day had been more magical than either could have imagined, but they both knew it was just the beginning. They had plans to start a foundation helping other couples with disabilities, to continue working with doctors developing new mobility technologies, and someday to start a family of their own. As they rejoined their reception, surrounded by love and joy, both Jasmine and Marcus knew that their viral wedding moment wasn't just about the surprise, or the standing, or the dance. It was about showing the world that true love knows no boundaries, no limitations, and no obstacles it can't overcome. Their story was just beginning, and they were ready to face whatever adventures lay ahead, together.